Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on tonight's webinar, Teaching Olympic Lifts to Throwers, Helpful Hints for Throws Coaches who double as strength coaches. Really excited to have our presenter tonight, Mary Theisen-Lappen, throws coach at University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. Hey, before we turn it over to Mary, though, we got to take care of a couple of things. Let's see here if I can get my, there we go. Hey, shout out to everything track and field, MF Athletics. Rob Lasorza is our guy there. If you're interested in any throwing equipment or really any track and field equipment, anything from a high jump pit to a discus, he's a great guy to get in contact with. He runs the National Throws organization. You can follow them on Twitter, and he's just a great benefactor to the throws. So send him some business. This is us at throws.com. Got a website, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's under DJ McQuaid. We just try to cover the throws and promote the heck out of them and spread knowledge. The webinar started about 3 years ago. Coach Roger Einbecker, you'll hear his voice occasionally during this as well. We were talking and we thought the world would be a better place if people could attend clinics wearing whatever they want, athletic shorts and dress socks or anything. So we've made that happen. So hopefully you're dressed comfortably and ready to learn. Here's our presenter for tonight, Mary Theisen-Lappen, and she is a straight-up triple threat. As a collegiate athlete, she threw 1720 in the shot. She placed 9th at the 2014 U.S. Championships. She placed 4th in the indoor and outdoor NCAA Division I Championships in 2014. That was throwing for Indiana State. Before that, she threw for Winona State. She was D2 National Discus Champion. She's become a world-class Olympic weightlifter. 106K snatch, 156K clean and jerk, ranked 2nd in the U.S. currently in her weight class. She's got the 5th best clean and jerk in the world, or she did in 2019. So pretty amazing lifter. She's got great promise in that sport. And she's doing a fantastic job as a coach, University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. Been there 5 years. 18 national qualifiers, 6 All-Americans. In the season that was just unfortunately suspended, her men were ranked #1 shot put squad in Division III, and her women were ranked #3. Hey, before I turn over to Mary here, attendees, feel free to submit questions throughout. I'll bring them up. Coach Einbecker will bring them up, and we'll make sure that we get your questions to Coach Mary. But right now, I want to turn you over to Coach Mary. Thank you so much for doing this, Coach. And I'm going to ask you to go ahead and take over the screen now, if possible.
Alrighty. Let's see here. All right. Hello, everyone. This is my first webinar, so I'm excited to try it, and I promise to do my best. I feel a little bit more comfortable that I'm behind a screen, if I'm being completely honest. Okay, so like Dan said, I'll be kind of talking a little bit about teaching Olympic lifts to throwers, primarily from a throws coach who maybe doesn't have a strength conditioning coach that is able to spread to all the sports at our school. So we have a really good guy, but with 19 sports, it's just easier for me to kind of do it myself for my group. So we'll get started. First thing I want to kind of touch on, and I'll bring it up again, but I do want to kind of bring up the fact that a lot of the stuff that I follow and that I teach my lifters and my throwers is from USA Weightlifting. So I've taken the level 1 and the level 2 course there, and I've taken some other like strength and conditioning and whatnot courses, and I really do believe that USAW does the best job out of them. So I guess I'm not trying to be a salesman, but at the same time, I know we're all kind of sitting around right now, and they are offering those classes online right now. So it might be a really good time to sign up for one of those and kind of learn what I'll get into as well. All right, so getting started. Again, like I said, this is kind of going to be a Olympic lifting for throws coaches / probably could be used for any other track coach or any other sport really. But for example, I don't have strength and conditioning at my school. I don't have a coach that's able to work with all the sports that I'm at that are at my school. What do I do? I'm going to kind of just go off of my experience and the things that I've done with my program, and I kind of feel that they've done it's been successful here. So the number one thing is for me was to build trust with my athletes. So I think that goes a long way with everything in coaching, but when it comes to doing the training and the strength and conditioning and even the throwing, they've kind of learned to trust me that what I'm telling them is going to be the best for them. So building off of that, when I teach these seniors and these older kids when they're younger on the technical things and the ways that I want them to train and the ways that I want them to be technical in the lifting and in the ring, I guess, I expect them, and they do, to be an extension of what I believe in and the things that I've taught them so they can help the younger kids and the kids that might be a little bit more unexperienced when I'm not there. Number 3, keep things simple. So I'll be honest, I don't teach my throwers the Olympic lifts the same way that my coach teaches them to me, just because completely honest, I don't have time. So I have 22 athletes, and I do my very best to make sure they're being technical as possible. Number 1, to avoid injury, and number 2, to make sure those lifts are actually being replicated into our throwing. And then the last thing on this one is I utilize video a lot for lifting, which I think is maybe a little bit different for a lot of throws coaches. But for example, what I'll do is, like I said, I have this picture as my team. I have a lot of athletes that just throw. So I like to split up my throwing groups no more than 5 or 6 people at a time, just because the throwing is very technical and I need to kind of be up in their business and seeing what's going on and whatnot. So as we start to get more comfortable throughout the season and the kids start to have better technique in the weight room, I basically send them off in their weightlifting groups that I give them, and then they send me video, and I basically break it down, whether it's right on the spot if I'm not as busy, or the next day at practice, we sit down and we look at those videos, and I kind of say, this is what you need to be working on. This is, I guess, where your bar path was. This is where I want your pull to start, little things like that we kind of break down. Again, whether it's at practice right then or the next day, we use video for lifting as well as for throwing. Next thing, for anyone who's, I guess, been in USAW or experienced with it, they do a 4-lift athlete assessment before they even start any Olympic lifts, which I never heard of until I started doing the certifications and whatnot. But I'm really glad that I use them now, because I think it avoids frustration with not being able to do a lift. I'd never really snatched before. We did some like narrow grip and some light stuff in college, but I'd never really done a full out snatch in school. So when I started lifting, like literally at 27 years old, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I think just the assessment is a really good way to kind of see what things the athletes need to work on before they start doing full lifts, to avoid frustration or injury or just full out getting mad that they can't do a real lift. So we'll go through those quick. I've recorded a bunch of videos. These aren't as good as the ones later. I had a kind of a rough week, so I did my best. But the first one is going to be a front squat. So can the athlete actually do a front squat the way they're supposed to when it comes to an actual front squat and when it comes to being able to do a clean? So I know a lot of coaches allow their athletes to do like a cross arms, or if you have poor mobility, maybe wrap those straps around the bar and hold the straps instead. But I actually do work towards getting my athletes to do a proper front squat with those elbows up, with their full hand on the bar, just because I think it makes them more stable. I actually like front squat a lot for my hammer throwers, which I'll be honest, I pretty much make all my kids throw hammer. So let's see this video here. I tried to record a bad one. The first one is, again, those elbows are way down. I'm having a hard time holding the bar, which obviously if we can't get those elbows up, then once you rack a clean, you're going to be fighting to even hold it. And so I really try to work on getting those elbows up, heels on the ground, like to be stable. We'll go to the correct one. Sorry I did this outside. So again, those elbows are up on the second set. I'm more stable. My heels are on the ground. I could do a bunch of them and not feel like the bar is going to fly out in front of me. So that's one of the lifts that we're going to work on getting good at. The next one is going to be, oh, here's the bad one again. We'll go here. Next one's going to be overhead squat. Overhead squat, I find the hardest to teach my kids how to do, just because it's hard. Like, it's hard to have the mobility. It's hard to have the balance. It's just, in my opinion, it's a hard lift. I still struggle with it. So things we're going to look at in the overhead squat are, and this might not be completely correct, but this is what I tell my kids and it works, is just think about like you're going to do a normal squat, but your hands are in the air. So I know it's, again, maybe not perfect, but it does work for the kids that I have try and do it. And they're like, oh, I guess it is the same. It's not that hard. So we think eyes forward, shoulders pushing up, so your shoulders aren't like sloppy or floating around everywhere while you're trying to stay stable. So we think shoulders. Again, heels are on the ground, so you have a nice stable base. Tight core, and then thinking about that bar being up from the middle of the foot. Sometimes athletes, again, this is a lack of mobility or a lack of experience, are having that bar super far behind them or super far in front of them. Take the sound off here. So this is a terrible overhead squat, and I honestly had a hard time kind of making a bad one, but I'm not great at these anyway, but it is kind of hard. But I'm just see that bar, my chest is falling forward. I'm having a hard time like staying balanced. I can't get any depth out of it. My feet are kind of coming off the ground because I'm all over the place. And now let's try a better one. So a better one, a little bit more balance. I can get a little bit more depth and things are a little bit better. So that's one of the harder ones I have to teach. Next one, military press. Military press isn't super hard for the kids to do. I'd say out of the 4 in the assessment, it's probably the easiest, but we'll go to the video right away on this one. The thing I find the most is that bar path going way out in front of the face. So it's like, see how it's like a loop like that? We'll play that one more time. Kind of like going up and around the face, which obviously, number one, you're not gonna be able to do much weight when you're doing that. And then also, it's not a replication of what we want to do on working with the jerk, which we'll get to later. But things I work on and look for in the military press are, this is a better one, straight up, not around the face. So straight up in the air, just like that, pressing at the top, and then pushing your head through at the finish. So kids like that one. A lot of my boys, especially, I'll be honest, like military press. Last one for the assessment is the snatch grip deadlift. So for that, very similar to a normal deadlift when it comes to technique and whatnot. Back needs to stay neutral, pulling the bar into your body. Don't just stand up straight up and just not use your legs. A cue that I think works well for me and I think works for the kids is pushing your feet through the ground instead of just standing straight up and using your back. Not only is it not going to help you be good at snatching, but it's going to hurt yourself. So, and I also wrote this part is you kind of feel it in your hamstrings if you do several of these and not in your lower back. So we'll watch this one. So standing straight up, that's not what you want to do because it's going to affect your snatch when you get to the actual lifts. Standing up again, we'll go to hopefully a good one. Pushing off the ground. I'm going to be honest, I'm not perfect at these, but I'm trying to get better. So that's the snatch grip deadlift.
Coach Mary, quick question.
Yes.
If someone is really bad at one or more of those,
yep.
So you test the kids in the fall when you first get together, right?
Correct.
Someone's really bad, what do you do? Okay,
so I should have said that, but I have a lot of kids that are really bad at them. So I have kids that have never in a million years done a overhead squat or even a front squat. So basically everyone kind of gets put on their own little path and their own little schedule during that thing. And because everyone typically has some type of deficiency, it's not super frustrating for the kids to be like, oh, well, this person's like really good at that already, because they probably have something they're not good at. So basically we back up and we start over, and our season is super long. And typically it's the freshmen that are the worst at it, and because they didn't go through this process with me yet. But when those freshmen come in, we work on it and we get better at it. And because those freshmen are used to a 3-month season, and where we are, it's sometimes like 6 weeks based on the weather. They're coming in and they're already going to need like a good base to get through that really long season. So we spend a lot of time on that stuff. And I explained to them, like, if you guys don't have a good base, you're going to end up hurt, you're going to get burnt out. And so, I mean, and again, that's that whole trusting the athletes thing. The older kids just say, like, I was really bad at this too, believe it or not, like, watch my form now. You should have seen me as a freshman. So that's kind of the, I guess, environment I like with my team, because they kind of step in when I need them to in that type of situation as well.
So if someone is terrible at overhead squat and snatch deadlift, you would remediate that.
Yep.
And then once they get pretty good at that, then you can start moving them toward a power snatch or something like that.
Yep. So as we get more to like the actual like breakdown of how I teach the actual lifts, there's kids that will, instead of working towards, say, like step 7 of 7, they're going to be working on mobility with an overhead squat with an empty bar or PVC pipe, and maybe they only get to step 2 for like the first month,
Mm-hmm.
And so again, like I said, there's kids that all struggle with something, and like I take a lot of pride in, like, I mean, my kids are not perfect, but they are pretty dang nice to each other, and they're supportive, and they just say, again, I was really bad at this too, like, you're going to get better, it's going to get easier. So some people have a really slow pace, and that's just the way it is, and they're fine with it for the most part.
So if you have 20 throwers, they all will probably be on a slightly different progression depending on what they're able to do.
And then, like I said too, I got really lucky the last 2 years because my seniors had really good strength and conditioning programs in high school. So with that too, like, then I basically have like another set of eyes that's helping, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to this a little bit later, but all these things I make them like basically check it off with me. Like, this is your checklist. This is the things that you need to make sure I see and tell you to go on to the next step before you start to get into the next thing. So they do a really good job of that. And I think they see results with it, and they see like in their throwing too. And so then they're like, oh, like maybe she doesn't know what she's talking about, So yeah, everyone's kind of on their own little path at first, at least.
Got it.
Okay, so these are just a few stretches. I'll be honest, like, I don't know the proper names for these. Like, I think everyone probably calls them different things. So the first one in the top left is these are just all good for the lats and your T-spine, which is really cool and I didn't really know this while I was throwing, but these things are not only going to help you in the weight room with your lifts that I'm asking you to be using to be good at throwing, but they're also going to make you feel like a new person when you're actually throwing. So they're just really good to be able to break things up, and we just get really tight, like especially with benching, like we have to bench as shot putters, so just things like these stretches are really good. Again, I don't have names for them. Most of the time when we do them, I get on the ground with them and I say, okay, now we're going to do this one. And I show them, and it's literally called like this one, So the stretches, a lot of the kids have some pain with them, not pain like they're hurt, but they're like, wow, I'm really, really tight. So we try to do these as much as we can just to kind of loosen things up and stretch things out so you feel good and ready to go to lift and throw. Okay, so this is just something I wanted to mention just before we started breaking the actual lifts down. So when I was in school, and this isn't anyone's fault because I think it's like a misconception through all of track and field or lifting in general. I thought that a power snatch or a power clean was anything from the floor, because I'm like, oh, it takes more power because it's from the floor. And I thought that a snatch or a hang snatch or hang clean was from like your hang position, like your knee. As I started lifting and I started hearing different words and I started having my coach talk to me, I realized that anything power, so clean or snatch, is basically when you catch your lift anything above parallel. So there's a lot of things like on Instagram or whatever where they're post a video lifting and it's like, oh, power or nah, and people guess like, oh, it's a power, it's not a power. So that's something I wanted to kind of bring up as we get closer to things. But I do allow my athletes to power almost everything. And the reason for that is everything we do in throwing is not basically below parallel, you know? And I'm not saying that, like, I make them squat parallel or below, like I make them do all that stuff, but I never want them to go into their snatches or cleans and say, okay, I'm going to sneak under this one as much as I can and not pull it high because I don't have to, because I can just sneak under. So I like them to power things, and if they happen to power it, and I've had athletes ask me, Coach, like, I'm not catching it low enough. I'm like, that's fine. Like, I really don't care how low you catch it. And then the last thing on this one is, with not catching it super low, when we're talking about a power snatch or a power clean, I like to relate it to like a reverse in track and field, where the reverse, I don't teach a reverse. I teach them that when you get over the board as much as you can and you're going super fast and are really crazy with that finish, you should reverse accidentally. It should be a reaction to your actual release. Same thing with power snatch or a power clean. If you catch that lift lower than you're used to, it's because the weight like pushed you down. So I never want them to just say, look how low I can catch it. Like, my butt was on the ground, you know? I want them to catch it high enough where they're actually being powerful, because it's, in my opinion, going to be a little bit more relative to their throwing. Okay. So now we're going to get into the actual learning. So that's kind of like, that probably took longer than I meant to, but kind of an intro to everything.
It's an excellent intro.
Okay. So I'm going to do my best to, these videos, again, I tried my very best to record them as best as I can. I'm having some success in lifting, but I'm by no means a technical model. I'm kind of like, genetically, I'm blessed and I'm strong, so I'm going to do my best to show you the best form for this stuff, but there's probably way better videos out of here. So the snatch. Like I said before, I make my kids make me approve them before they're able to move on to the next step. So one thing I always think about is bar path, keeping that bar really close to your body. So the first thing we're going to do is basically your start position and where you're going to hold the bar. I always tell my kids when we first start, if they've never snatched before, they're probably not going to know where their hands should be on the bar. They know that it's wider than a clean, but they don't know, should I have my hands way against the collar? Should I have them in more? The only thing you might, as a coach, be able to help them with is, I mean, I have a 6'9" athlete. Like his arms are going to be wider than my 5'4" girl. So things like that, just to kind of begin. Again, we're going to start with finding the grip, pretend like I already found the grip, bars against your shins. A lot of people are doing a snatch with their bar like 6 inches forward in front of their legs. It feels strange at first, but the bar is actually going to be right up by your legs, which is going to help that bar path as we get to it. Flat back, shoulders over the bar. So on these starts, we're going to do some liftoffs, and we're just going to literally go from the knee back to the ground. So we'll play that. We'll mute it. I'm going to do a few of those. Again, I'm by no means a perfect technical model, but I tried to do my best for this. So we'll do 3 of those. So that's a good start for those. Once the athlete is able to basically replicate that snatch grip deadlift, a lift off here, keeping that spine neutral, not bending over, not picking those legs straight up and making them straight, I will approve them to go on to the next step.
Mary, quick question.
Yeah.
On those, on your snatch lift off, where do you want your center of gravity? Like middle foot, back foot?
Yeah, you're going to want them like basically in the middle of your foot. Like you don't want your weight on your toes because then you're going to fall forward. You don't want your weight all the way on your heels because then you're going to pull your shoulders back once you get to say like step 3 and 4-ish. If you pull that bar way back and your weight's on your heels, you're going to fly back. The bar is going to fly in a weird spot. And so we're thinking like just middle.
Okay.
Next step is going to be pulls. I think people think pulls are really easy, and I think they're not. So when you really dial in on that bar path, keeping the bar close to your body, which isn't super comfortable sometimes, it's just like kind of strange. You think about when you get to those pulls, almost think about pulling your shirt up. That's what I tell. Obviously, I don't make the kids do it, but if you think about that bar being close enough where you're like changing at the end of the day and you lift your hands up. So we're going to go a pull from the hip, a pull from the knee, and then a pull from, or I guess that should say pull from the ground. And then the other thing with pulls is I would like the athletes to try and stay on their toes or at least balance for just a second or two, because if they can't balance, then their bar path is not in the correct way. If they're falling forward, like you said, or if they're falling back and they can't balance, then that bar is not where it needs to be. So we'll watch a couple of these. So pull from the hip, pull from the knee, and then we're going to go from the floor. And we're trying to keep the bar as close to our body as possible.
Mary, what cue do you use for the elbow, the path of the elbows in this?
I guess, so I like to think and tell the kids, once your bar, and we'll talk about power position. Power position is essentially right where the bar is right now on my body. I try to think that those elbows kind of take over for your arms, and I guess those, when your bar is hitting your legs, your elbows are going to pull up and take over the job, you know. Again, I try to keep it all straight, try to keep it straight up from the floor all the way to above your head. I don't want the elbows like pulling back, or I would think people would have a hard time rotating them forward, but I don't want them pulling it back because that means the shoulders are probably pulling back. I want everything straight up in a line. Next one, again, we talked a little bit about right where the bar is right now. That's going to be my power position. In power position, that's, again, kind of your home station, just like in throwing, where you kind of warm up, and that's where you want to get to. You start in the back of the ring and you do your spin or your glide and you end up in the front. That's your go-to place where you're going to be able to go hard and powerful. That's where we need to get the bar from the floor into that power position in the snatch. It's going to be a different, again, on that. Everyone's body is a little bit different, so I have a 6'3" wingspan and I'm 5'9", so I have really long arms. If my arms are really short, my power position, my bar would be up more. It's just kind of whether people's wingspan is or how tall they are or whatnot. So try not to, as a coach, think that everyone's power position is the same exact. It's going to differ a little bit, just like, honestly, just like throwing, everyone's going to be a little bit different. Number 4, high pulls. So the next step would be kind of feeling that power output from the actual hitting the power position. So we're going to go high pulls from the floor, and then instead of just stopping at the pull, we're going to go full, like a power snatch. So we'll watch that one. And I just tell my kids in this part, instead of high pull, just continue up a little bit more and get into the overhead squat. Why is this not playing? Okay. So this is your high pull from the floor. And then I say, okay, kids, same thing, but just go a little bit more and catch it right, just like that. And it stopped, so let me try that again. Hopefully this is the right video. So again, that's, whoops, sorry. Just that power snatch after the high pull. So I like the high pull before, because then they kind of get that bar path and that muscle memory. I compare this kind of in throwing to the drill where you do like a 360 stop, then a full throw, just to kind of get that muscle memory. Like I need to get a wide foot in the back. So that's a good one for that. Let's go back to here. Next one is going to be.
Quick question.
Yes.
While you're teaching the snatch to your athletes, is overhead squat in their workout?
Yeah, so we'll do. Oh, you mean like in the actual workout, or in the actual like steps of learning it?
In the workout.
Sometimes. I'll do it in the beginning. So actually, on the next one is under number 5. We'll do basically like again, snatch, high pull, a power snatch, and then instead of just doing a full snatch and learning to go down, we do an overhead squat after that. So say I have like 5 sets of this combination of the high pull, the power snatch, and the overhead squat. I'm not going to make them do overhead squats after.
Got it.
So I'll make them kind of do like a warm up with them, just to kind of get warmed up and whatnot. But as throwers, I don't do a lot of overhead squat, to be completely honest. So again, we talked about that one. A cue that I really like, and I stuck this in here, is when you pull up. So if I'm here in that power snatch, when my hands are catching, basically when my arms are locked out, I like my feet to hit at the same time. And that's helped me a lot to kind of just feel the actual power instead of having like limbs flying all over and like just feeling unstable. So I really like that cue. I use that one a lot with my kids, and they've also said that they like that one too.
So hands, feet. When the feet touch,
Yep.
the feet are going to snap out a little bit. When they touch, the arms should be locked out.
Yep, you're going to jump your feet out a little bit to feel a little bit more balanced. People like to start their feet different spots. I start my feet super, super narrow and jump them out. It kind of just depends on the person. And then to learn actual snatch, we're going to go power snatch, or I guess this is the one before. So that was over at the squat. We'll go power snatch here. And then we're going to go, second one is going to be a snatch, and we're going to ride down. So get a little bit more depth with that power. So there and there. And then finally is just a full snatch. So again, these are just the steps the kids get approved on. And once they get approved, they get to go to the next one. So
once the season starts, or once you're throwing a lot, the kids will submit video to you.
They will.
They'll say, look, coach, I can do this now. I can do a pull. Can I move on?
And honestly, like we are the first like month, the first week is no throwing. We don't throw it all the first week. We just focus on this. So it's 5 days a week learning these things. And then after that, it's like, since our season is so long, I don't really like throwing a ton right away. So then maybe that week we have 2 days of lifting and 3 days of throwing, or a little bit of drilling. So it actually ends up being like a month of this, kind of just like learning these things. And then really in that after like Thanksgiving-ish time, that's when the kids start to be kind of on their own, which at that point, it's almost like probably like 2 months of them being fully on their own. So then I start to feel a little bit more comfortable with it anyway. So, but they're still, I mean, they still send me videos all the time. They'll send me videos in the summer, even be like, oh, something's off. Like, what do you think? You know? So.
Hey, another quick question before we move forward. When you're doing these progressions, how long on average does it take athletes to progress to be able to do the full lift?
I would say, so let's talk about like a person that's never done a snatch before in their life with a super lightweight, like a bar, and like, let's just say it's like a freshman girl who's never done a snatch in her life. She's not going to start with the bar probably. She's going to start with a PVC pipe, and she's going to do no weight, and it's just going to be learning things like that. And so by the time she can snatch like with the bar and maybe like a little bit of weight, I'm going to say it's probably going to be, she's not snatching with weight for maybe that first like 3 or 4 weeks. So it can take a long time depending on how picky you want to be. But there's kids that have had a ton of experience. They have, like I said, a randomly really good high school strength and conditioning coach, and they're doing them right away, you know? So, and or we're dialing back on what?
Will you take as long as you need? Like if someone is still moving along this progression in January or February, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, there gets to be a point where I'm kind of, I mean, I don't get frustrated. I'm not like mad at them or something, but I get like, I haven't had that happen yet, but I think, I kind of have that reputation with recruits and with my athletes. Like, she's kind of picky about things, you know, like all the little things that sometimes people hate doing, like I kind of have that reputation, like don't try to not do them because she's going to make you. So I haven't had someone take, say, to January, February, but even in January, February is kind of nice because they're not in school. So we have more time to kind of dial in on it then, which carries them over until May or June, whenever they're done.
So for the kids who move through the progression faster, does their regular training plan differ from those that are still working through the 7 positions?
The reps and sets I usually don't change. So for example, like this first week when we learn all this stuff, when we haven't done anything yet, this is just week 1 of track, just got there in the fall, we're doing 1 week of just breaking down the Olympic lifts. Those kids say it's like 5 sets of 3. So for example, if it's on set 1, or if they're on snatch position, start grip, then I'll make the kids do like 5 sets of 3 of liftoffs, and we'll get really good at those. And if say set 4, I decide, wow, that looks really good. Let's do a couple sets of some high pulls or some pulls from knee or pulls from hip. But if someone comes in, or a junior, senior is like super good that first week, like I'll still make them kind of relearn this stuff just that first week. But week 2, maybe they're going to jump into, on their last set, they're doing full snatch already, just because they did it all summer, or they've been with me for 3 years and I trust them that they're doing it right, you know? So everybody I kind of make redo it a little bit in the fall, just to make sure they're dialed in and ready to go. But by that second week or so, there's kids that are skipping most of this. Okay, so now, well, I think I was going to show this. Again, I'm not the most perfect snatcher. I'm working my best to get better at it, but.
You have a 106 PR, so that you must be doing something right.
Yeah. We'll see. Hopefully I can do more this year. Okay, so clean. I personally think it's easier to teach clean, just because I think, I don't know, it's not less technical, but it's just a lot of kids that I get at least have done it before. So at least I can kind of break down, hopefully not bad habits, but at least they kind of like know what it is, or they've seen it. So this one will kind of be a little bit quicker, just because it's essentially the same exact things. Finding that start position. This is another one that grip's going to change a little bit. So some kids I've found, I get a lot of high school kids coming in from high school that think that their hands should be like super, super close, but then they can't get their elbows up, or they feel goofy pulling it off the floor. So we play a little bit with that grip, and again, how long their arms are, how tall they are, things like that. So I kind of tweak some things like that, much like I tweak their feet in a power position, or where they start in the back of the ring for rotational. So things like that I kind of tweak. So same things, shoulders over bar, clearing your knees, holding for 2 seconds. I don't think I hold in this video, probably because I was sore from other stuff. But kind of just thinking those legs going through the ground, keeping the back straight. Number 2, learning pulls, same thing, from the hip, from the knee, from the ground. Again, I think pulls are way harder than people think they are. I have a really hard time keeping them straight, and not like, one thing that coaches will need to look for is making sure that the athlete isn't pulling the bar up and basically like slamming it off their legs and disconnecting from the bar to the body. I'll get into that a little bit later, but the reason why you don't want that to happen is, if this is mostly throws coaches listening, but if you think about in the front of the ring, when someone's throwing and they whip say a right-handed thrower whips their head to the left side, there's no connection with the ball anymore, or the discus or whatever. If you pull your head to the left side, your ball's probably going to fly to the right. It's the same thing in the snatch. If you're pulling your bar into your legs and you slam it off your legs and basically like thrust your hips into it, and the bar goes flying forward and you go flying back with your shoulders, everything is just going to be off. So that's kind of a relationship that's kind of made sense to me as a former thrower and a throws coach. So making sure that bar path is straight. So we'll watch that one. Let's see here. So from here, from the knee, and then from the floor. And again, you want to try to have those athletes stay balanced when they're up on their toes in that triple extension, because if they're not, then there's probably an issue with that bar path. So a good way to learn is to kind of step from the side and watch and see where that bar is going once it hits power position.
Mary, can I ask you a question about the power position, please? Yes. You talk about maybe tinkering with it a little bit depending on how long an athlete's arms are, how long their legs are.
Yep.
How do you know when the power position is not right? Like what would make you start to tinker?
Well, I've had athletes think like, oh, blah, blah told me that she's got bruises all over her, blah, blah, like some body part, and that's where I should do it. I'm like, no, like that's not, like your body's different than hers, you know? So, I don't know, like basically when they're in that power position, so we'll go to this video. I think it's right after this one. So right here, basically you want your shoulders right in front of the bar. So we'll go here. So if I draw a line here, my shoulders are a little bit above the bar. My arms aren't like super locked out, but they're not like droopy or not doing anything. And it's just going to be where the bar hits you on the body. So like I said, if my arms are like shorter, it'd be hitting me more like by the belly, or if my arms were even longer, it'd be hitting me closer to here. So it's kind of, you get your shoulders in the right position and you're a little bit of bend in the legs and where you want that bar to hit you before it goes up. And that's going to basically be where your athlete's power position is going to be.
And one reason you might adjust the width of the grip would be their ability to rack the clean then?
Yeah. Because like I said, there's athletes where like the knurling of the bar where it starts like about here, there's athletes that have their hands like on the smooth part. And I'm like, how the heck do you think you're, and then I move it out. And of course my athletes are awesome. They have really good attitudes, but there's times where you move something like that and they've worked all through high school with the same thing. And then you ask them to change and they're like, oh, I don't know. And then they change it and they're like, wow, that's so easy. So, I mean, you just kind of, I guess, again, go back to gaining the trust of those athletes. So when you ask them to change something that they don't want to change, then they just trust you and hopefully it works out.
Got it.
Okay, so power position, we found that. Next progression is going to be feeling that explosion. So high pulls from the floor. Okay, just step back again. Okay, sorry. So back that up. So high pull from the floor. And that, I mean, even that one wasn't very balanced, so that really wasn't great. And then this one's going to be power clean. So we're catching that bar nice and high. Oh my gosh, what is going on? I'm sorry.
It's the wonder of technology.
Right. But yeah, you're catching the bar nice and high. I'm not catching it really low and trying to pause. I like to tell the kids to pause there, but I'm not trying to sneak under it because I still want to catch it nice and powerful, like high like that. The next progression is going to be, again, I wrote hands and feet because I like that. Think about in the clean, it'd be kind of like your elbows popping up and your feet hitting at the same time. So we're going to go clean, high pull, then a clean, and then a front squat. So that kind of makes the athlete learn how to go down if they have to. So clean, pause, front squat, and then we take the pause away. Okay, let me back up a little bit. This one's going to be a power clean, and then a clean riding down, kind of taking away that pause from the front squat. So here. So as you can see on that one is a little bit less pause. There wasn't like a clean stop, front squat. It was a clean ride down. And then the last one is an actual clean. So something I found too with, honestly, with myself and with some of my like bigger and like stronger athletes, when learning the clean or learning even like the front rack, there's times where sometimes it's easier to put a little bit of weight on because they almost like need the bar. Like for me, I'll just use myself for an example. I'm like pretty tight in my lats and I have a hard time like holding the bar where it needs to sit on my shoulders when it's empty. So I'll put like a 25 on just to kind of like warm up or even kind of feel that, because some kids get frustrated because they can't get their elbows up when they need to if the bar is completely empty. So sometimes I will let them put a little bit of weight on it. Okay, so that's the clean.
Hey, Mary, quick question. These kind of combos that you're having your athletes do, like a pull, a clean, pause in the front squat, a clean to the front squat with no pause. These are combos you'd use during this kind of learning phase with your athletes?
Yep. Yeah, I don't do any like combinations, things like this during regular season. So I do them for myself as a weightlifter, but I don't do any like complex work with them during the season. I'll have a slide later that's kind of like a example of a week of after all this has already happened, but we don't do like any of the combination stuff.
Got it.
Okay, next one is my favorite, and that's the jerk. And I think, like I said on the top, I think every thrower should be best friends with the jerk, because the power that it takes to jerk is exactly what a thrower needs to connect with that final throw and bit of power when they're actually finishing the throw. So first part is super easy, is we're just going to dip and restart. So literally just a few of these, nothing too difficult. The next one's going to be the same exact thing, but you're going to push up in like a push press. So push press here, basically. Thinking about that military press where you're going straight up, you're not going up and around your face. I like to tell you.
Mary,
Yep.
what cues do you use on the dip?
I don't know. I guess I don't know if I've really ever given them a cue besides just literally dip. I make sure that they breathe nice before, and just a little bit of, I guess I do the same thing with the snatch and the clean and jerk. I tell them you don't want to be dipping forward or dipping back, because that's going to screw up your jerk. Just straight down dip, straight down push up, or straight up pushing.
Do you ever have trouble with kids lifting their heels up when they dip?
Not really, actually. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't look for it enough, but I don't really notice it.
Maybe you just demonstrate it so well that they don't do that.
Well, I'll be honest too, like, and maybe this isn't anything related, but a lot of my kids have weightlifting shoes. So they kind of like can sit back on those heels a little bit better than like if they're in just regular tennies.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a good point.
Next thing is going to be, yeah, they all got weightlifting shoes and they saw that I had them. They're like, oh, we have to get them too. So next one is, again, we talked about a little bit, but one more of these, just a straight push up. We're going to go back here. The next thing is going to be, I guess I don't know if there's much similar like in throwing, but I guess in sprinting it'd be kind of like this, where that drill where you're having your athlete in front of you and you push them and you kind of decide what foot it should be in forward. Mm-hmm. This is going to be similar to that for jerking, but a drill that you can do to kind of feel what feels better is hand on your hip, and then you basically try a split jerk with your right foot forward, and then you're going to try one with your left foot forward. And I've found that most of the time one's going to feel really good and one's going to feel like they've never like walked before. Like it's just very difficult. So I personally thought that most throwers would like their right foot forward, because to me that made sense for a power position. But then one of my friends told me that it made sense that your left foot was forward because of power position, the way coming into the front. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. Maybe it's just all comfort, you know? Mm-hmm. So that drill that you're going to help your kids find out is this one. So you're just going to put your hands on your hips and you're going to try both. And one of those is going to feel better than the other. That will be your actual technique for that. Now we're going to actually go bar with the bar, hands pushing to the sky, decide what foot goes forward. I choose my right goes forward. Feet are going to hit. And technically I know for like weightlifting, they say that I think it's the front foot is supposed to hit first, but you can barely tell. I just tell my kids to keep it simple. Your feet should hit at the same time, because if I tell them something like your front foot should be first, they're going to overthink the crap out of it. And they're going to start doing all these fancy things when I just need them to be simple. So regular jerk here. I should have recorded this step better because you can't even see my foot, but we'll go, I think it's one more here. So just same thing with no bar. Oh, the recovery is going to be front foot to the middle, back foot to the middle. So I always make sure I try to teach that, because some kids, they can do a nice jerk, but they've never been taught like, okay, how do I get into a safe position where I can actually drop the bar? So I make sure to always teach front foot, back foot recovery, back to the middle, get stable, drop the bar. And then your final step for this one for jerk is just clean and jerk. And I actually stuck my clean and jerk video from my last meet because I was like, I might as well. And this was actually like, I think one of my like prettiest clean and jerks, but so that one, like even on that recovery, if you just look at this real quick here, I was a little unstable, but I tell the kids the same thing, just wait a second, get your footing, get comfortable, and then you can finish your recovery and be safe and not drop it on yourself.
So, Mary, I'm going to ask you to quote a statistic here because everybody saw there was 156 kilos on the bar and you stood up like there was nothing on it. So what did you tell us you front squatted the other day?
Well, my front squat PR is 200 kilos. So it's 440 in pounds. So, I mean, my thing is, which I'm kind of mad because on my next lift, I missed my jerk and I never miss my jerks. But I don't know. I try not to live by this, but I do front squat a lot. And so I have really dialed into my pulls and my deadlifts and making things not feel heavy off the floor because I basically, once I catch it in that front squat, I'm like, oh, okay, now the hard part's over, you know? So I'm trying not to believe that, but I do feel pretty confident once I'm in that front squat position that I should be fine, I hope. Okay, so that's the clean and jerk. And then these are just the last few things. Program design, this is, again, just my 2 cents, not anything that people should think that it's scientific or anything, but I keep things very simple. So I don't do any of those complexes. I don't do anything crazy. Once we get into actual season, they're going on their first day. They usually have a clean. They usually have a snatch on a different day. We only lift 3 days a week. So I'm not doing a ton of that stuff or anything fancy. We're doing straight cleans, some clean and jerk, some just jerk, and then the rest of your workout. As a throws coach, I don't ever have my kids do over 4. I really actually stick closer to 3 or 2, just because, I mean, these kids, again, are just starting out on this, and the more you do, the worse the technique's going to get. And let's be honest, 4 reps is a lot for people that are a little bit bigger, you know? So we kind of get into that cardio range, and then they start to get mad at me. So we stick to the really 3s, and then once we go down to in season, I'll go down to 2s, and sometimes I'll even do like a cluster where I'll do 1 and then wait 30 seconds and do another one. So it's kind of depends on where we are in the season. Yeah, that's pretty much for my program design. I stuck an example here. This is a really mean lift that I did for the kids. They asked for it though, so I don't feel that bad. They wanted to do like really heavy volume bench and really heavy squats or really heavy volume squats. So I stuck a snatch on day 1, a clean on day 3. We didn't jerk yet because we were early in the season and I didn't want to fit it in and make them super exhausted or anything. So we had 5 sets of 3 on snatch, 4 sets of 10 on bench and back squat, and then some auxiliary stuff. And then on day 2, I'll just stick them with like an easy day, bodybuilding, hypertrophy type auxiliary stuff. I wrote on here that the boys like these more than the girls. The girls think it's kind of stupid, but the boys like it because they want their muscles to be big. So again, this is kind of just an example of something that I would do for my kids.
Mary, quick question. Yep. Is the order of the lifts in those workouts important?
Yes, I always make snatch or clean and jerk first, because if they do it, say they did, especially in this, like if they did 4 sets of 10 on bench and then tried to do snatches, like they would all die. Like there would be so much terrible technique and there'd be bars flying everywhere and people would be, you know, so I try to stick the most technical or the most difficult, like technique wise, I guess, lift first so they can be nice and fresh and ready to go for that one. And then like, for example, like back squat, if they're exhausted for back squat, I don't really care because they'll get over it. You know, they need to do in the beginning of the season a lot of stuff and we back off a lot later. So I would make them do the Olympic lifts first.
There's a question, Mary, from
Whoops.
With a 12 or 13 week season.
Yep.
What would you recommend to teach and employ Olympic lifts for high school kids?
So in a season, say for example, like you said, 12 or 13 weeks, so something short, like in the area or Midwest, I guess. I would really focus on that first few weeks at least, working that progression and making sure that, especially high school kids are in a lot of kids in the same time in the room, in the weight room. So you don't have sets like groups of 5 in there. You have probably 20, 30, 50 kids. So I would really focus on that first few weeks on getting that form as best as possible. And then maybe, I guess I would do kind of like what we do. I would jump in, do a handful of sets, some 3s, and then maybe jump down into 2s. I don't know. I'd say 2s and 3s would probably be the best. I don't know if I would have high schoolers do tons of singles, because technically the singles should be a little heavier. And since high school kids compete all the time, there's times where high school kids have 3 meets in a week. So especially in the Midwest where meets are canceled all the time and you have to have makeup meets all the time. So I would try to keep things as simple as possible, not try to be too fancy with it, just because if you end up writing a workout with a bunch of heavy singles and they compete the next day, like it's probably not going to go awesome. So I would stick to that technique, the breakdown, and then kind of just stick to a lot of maintenance probably. Okay, so conclusion, again, I've said this a handful of times, keep things very simple. I try to keep things as simple as possible when it comes to the workouts and everything, because it can be really difficult to even keep it simple. Like even keeping a snatch really simple is still really hard. So, and with throwing too, we do the same thing. We try to keep things as simple as possible, because if you try to dig too much into things, then it just gets a little frustrating. So keeping it simple. I, again, really recommend to take a USAW course. I've taken the USTF CCCA one. I've done some random like clinics and whatnot, and I truly believe that the USA weightlifting one is the best. I wrote this in there. I rarely have my athletes max out in snatches, and that's primarily because I can't be in 2 places at once. So if I'm in the gym having a group of 6 people throw weight, I can't have athletes without me. I don't feel comfortable with them maxing out on snatches, and they don't even really max out on cleans a ton without me, but I feel a little bit more comfortable with that because most of the athletes have had experience with it. But yeah, we rarely max out snatches. As a throws coach, especially as a former thrower myself, I really do believe that Olympic movements are crucial for throwers, and I believe that the power input that's put into the throws and put into the lifts and the output is exactly the same. Like, it's obviously different body parts and implements, and the bar is a bar and the shot put's a shot put, but I really think they go so nicely hand in hand. And I think if you can learn how to teach your athletes the correct way to do them, you'll be really surprised with what you'll get out of it. And then finally, again, I'm far from expert in this. I am very new into weightlifting. I find it very interesting and really fun. And again, the relationship between an event as powerful and short as throwing, say, shot put, which is like 1 second or 2 seconds, if you can get really good at something as powerful as a snatch in that basically same amount of time or even less, I really think that it's a good thing to be good at. And again, I'm no expert, and I'm doing my best to teach the kids the best way they can without getting hurt, and it's helping them out.
So I think you're underselling yourself on the weightlifting part, because you said before when we were doing some practice stuff that you enjoyed weightlifting when you were a thrower, right? So you've spent a lot of time in the weight room. Yep. I think you're kind of making your comments relative to your Olympic weightlifting competitive career.
Yes, very true. Like I mean, like you said, as a thrower, I always, honestly, I think I said this before, I felt more comfortable in the weight room than I did in a circle throwing. I felt more confident and I felt like I was better at it. And I honestly think I probably should have thrown everything farther based on what my strength levels were. But, I mean, again, I think it's the perfect type of training to have your athletes do. And I've heard a lot of coaches say, well, I don't feel comfortable with my athletes doing Olympic lifts because they can get hurt. And that's true, but you can also get hurt walking on the sidewalk or throwing hammer, or, you get types of injuries all the time, but that's just being an athlete. So I think when you learn the correct way to teach these lifts and you relay them in the correct way, it's a really good way to actually avoid injury is by strengthening those muscles and getting really good at things that will help you be a better thrower and hopefully avoid not getting hurt.
Mary, a couple quick questions.
Yep.
When you're choosing the lifts, when you're constructing a workout, do you have a preferred lift outside of the Olympic lifts for discus throwers, one for shot putters, one for hammer throwers? What are your favorites?
For hammer throwers, I would say my favorite lift that's not an Olympic lift, well, not like a snatch or clean or a jerk, would be a front squat, just because I like how they're kind of sitting back on the weight or whatnot and the bar being in front of them. And if you take the bar away from a hammer thrower or a person doing a front squat and have them catching, that's stick a hammer in their hand and they're essentially the same thing. So I like front squat for hammer throwers. I like I like squats a lot for everyone, but I would say I want my athletes, my shot putters, to have a big bench. My primary shot putters, I like for them to be strong in their chest and whatnot. As long as they're still fast and still flexible, I wouldn't sacrifice any other lift for it, but I do like their bench to be high. And then discus, I would say a non-Olympic. That's a hard one because I always think snatch is my favorite for a discus thrower, but
I think that has the most carryover.
Yeah, I do think it does. So I would say snatch, even though it's still an Olympic lift. But
hey, one more question. If a coach is taking the USA Level 1 course, would you recommend that he takes Level 2? This is a throws coach.
I do, yeah. So Level 1, the way they break it up is a lot of technique and a lot of like very, very beginning stuff. And I think it's really great the way they don't make their courses like for people that already have a giant background in it. Like when I did my Level 1, I was all nervous because I'm like, I've muscled everything in my whole life and I'm not going to know anything and everyone's going to know everything. And it ended up being like, to be honest, there's a lot of CrossFitters, a lot of people that had zero experience doing it, or a lot of personal trainers that just were trying to basically make their toolbox bigger and learn different ways of lifting and different correct technique. So I think that the Level 1 is super awesome. And I don't necessarily think the Level 2 is 100% necessary, but I think that it goes more in depth and they do a good job like teaching about program design and more in depth with the lifting and whatnot. So, you'll be in super great hands if you take the Level 1, but the Level 2 is really great too.
Mary.
Yep.
Would you recount for us how you went from being a fine shot putter to a fine throws coach to a world-class Olympic lifter? How'd that happen?
Yes, I actually have I didn't know what to say much, so I stuck some videos in here.
Oh, fantastic.
These are just like my throwing videos, but basically my plan was to be a post-collegiate thrower. I wanted to throw after college and I figured it'd probably be in the shot, but I took the summer off and then I was like, I actually don't know if this is for me. And so I basically started coaching. I was a volunteer coach at UW-Madison, and I decided that my passion for track and field would be transferred into coaching. So I figured I'd maxed out my throwing potential and that it was time for me to be around the sport in a different way. So that was in 2014. Fall of 2017 rolls around, and Mike Gattone calls me, who's one of the technical directors, like high up guys in USA Weightlifting, and he's like super, super nice. I hope you all get to meet him sometime, but he was like, basically I got a hold of your lifting videos from college and you need to be lifting. And I'm like, I haven't lifted anything in 3 years. Probably not. So, I guess I had just gotten married and I was starting out. I was head coach actually at the time at my school, and I really had no time, but I was like, well, let me just do it to get in shape. So I competed that January, and then this is my first meet actually. It ended, I was pretty bad at first. I did 81 on snatch and I missed my first 2 lifts and I wiped out and was on the ground. And then I did 125 and clean and jerk. Let's see here if I can get it to play. And now it's what, 26-ish months later. And I've done 113 and, or I guess in a meet. I've done 113 in snatch and training and then 106 in a meet. And then this is the first meet clean and jerk. So it's kind of funny looking back. I think I've gained about like, I don't know, 20 pounds or so since then. But just my technique and stuff has gotten a lot better. And I've really dialed into a lot of things that I hadn't really thought about before. But I guess now, my goal at first was that I would train till, this is when I didn't really know anything, but my goal was I'm going to train till 2021, and if I don't make an international team, I'm going to be done. And then I realized that I guess this is going a little bit better than I thought it would, and I'm kind of hooked on it now. So we'll see. As long as I can stay healthy, I guess I'm going to try and train for 2024 and see what happens. But right now, I'm just really focusing on getting my snatch a little closer to my clean and jerk, just because there's a pretty big difference there. But I've had experience with cleans and jerks and whatnot, and I had 0 experience pretty much with the snatch. Hopefully, we can make some noise in the sport and see what happens, I guess.
Fantastic. Coach Einbecker, anything?
Well, there was a little chat here that I'm going to toss out. So, Mary, do you know Mike Turgeon?
Yes.
So,
he told me he was going to watch.
Well, he's offering up a little story here. So I think everybody can see it probably, but maybe you said when you were a sophomore at Winona State, he asked you what you could bench, and you said 205.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's not very much, but you said, well, that's for 4 sets of 10.
Yeah, I haven't benched in a while, but yeah. Turgeon's probably got all kinds of funny stories like that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Really appreciate it, Coach Mary. Everybody needs something like this right now to, take our focus off the crazy stuff and keep our focus on becoming great coaches. This will be on YouTube soon. Check with us, on mcthrows.com. I'll post a link to it. And there'll be more webinars coming soon. So keep checking mcthrows.com. Coach Mary, really appreciate it. Fantastic job. And, best of luck navigating all this craziness.
Yeah, thank you. You guys too.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and end it then. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.